Okay, so welcome everyone. As you can see here, the title is Modularize Your Frontend Architecture. So each word here, like modularization, frontend, and architecture, is quite a topic for a separate PhD on its own. So I cannot cover this in 18 or 20 minutes, like, thoroughly, but I would like to suggest you a probably different perspective, different way of looking at how do you design your architecture, how do you modularize your applications, and that is certainly not going to be the absolutely best way to design applications, but I would like you to remember that way, remember that tool, and to be able to basically choose the approach, choose the tool that fits your certain application. So this is going to be something that is less technical and more closer to architecture and business. From my kind of experience, this is a, let's say, perspective that front-end developers often tend to ignore or don't care about as much as they should. So yeah, my name is Tomasz, and I've been working in this industry kind of since 2007. I've been doing many things, many roles, like being a developer, team lead, architect, consultant, auditor, blah, 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 many different things. Right now I'm independent consultant, and I cooperate with multiple teams trying to help them with removing obstacles related to architecture, performance, testability, whatever that is. I'm also an author of the Architektura na Froncie, INF course, and the new one that we have just launched yesterday, Developer Jutra. Both are in Polish. What I find kind of important in our modern industry is that it's kind of being reshaped very significantly. And I believe that the skills that we have gathered during all our careers are going to be reevaluated. Some of the skills that we have gained are going to be extremely important, and some of the skills that we've had so far might lose their importance also significantly. So what I believe very strongly is that product engineering, working on products, not necessarily technical frameworks, is going to be the way forward. If you're interested in product engineering architecture and basically getting out of your kind of thin specialization and getting more kind of a generalized developer who is not afraid of front-end, back-end, databases, DevOps, operations, etc., I would like to invite you to the course. So I would like to start with whenever we were speaking about designing anything and architecture, first and foremost, the first thing that you will probably hear is that it depends. And I also want to start with that. It always depends what you need, what are you going to choose, what are the trade-offs, what are the pros and cons of different choices, of different solutions. Now, if you take a look at this duality, you will see that depending on looking at a certain perspective, you will see totally different things. So it very much depends on what you care about, what are your architectural drivers. So I have only 18 minutes, so yeah, that's going to be very quick. But I would like you to take a different perspective on frontend. So first thing, I would like you to reconsider or maybe even drop thinking about centralized stores when it comes to front-end engineering. And I've got a couple of reasons for that. Now, I'm not evangelizing any specific solutions. To be honest, I really don't care what framework are you using. It's really not that important. But in the long run, what I've seen in my experience in consulting different applications is that way more often than not, centralized stores introduce way more problems than they're worth. And another thing is, if you're thinking about way to kind of cut your application into pieces, try to think about the verbs, so the actions, the business activities that your system, that your product is capable of doing, and not the nouns. By nouns, I mean basically data, tables in a database, entities that you fetch via ORM or by SQL, whatever that is. So basically, don't focus on data, focus on business activities. Why? First and foremost, that's because how business is going to split the organization to deliver products to customers, right? And that's almost never being divided by your database schema. Obvious, right? But we need to change our perspective. Now, if there are people who think about splitting the application by business activities, by business modules, by business capabilities, that's perfectly fine. So I'm very happy that you have already crossed that river onto the other side. Though, yeah, again, from my experience, that's not very common on Frontend, unfortunately. Finally, we should focus on business domain, and by that, I'm going to very extremely briefly introduce strategic domain-driven design, DDD, here. So we're going to just touch the tip of the iceberg, or the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. Again, that's just 18 minutes. But I think still these 18 minutes are going to be very useful for you and will give you a different perspective. Now, something that could sound a little theoretical, maybe you have heard about Conway's law and all these team topologies, etc., etc. These are very important things when you think about a product that is going to be organized into teams that should finally deliver software. Now, what is important to everybody? If you think about your project, what do you see? You might see a repo. You might see a bunch of repos. You might see CI/CD pipelines or builds or whatever. But on the other hand, so this is the technical layer. You might see the tools, the frameworks, the dependencies, package JSON, whatever that is. But on the other hand, and this is very important from the perspective of that's called socio-technical systems. System has a technical part, but there is also a human part, us, the people, the teams. The teams have different business priorities that are being assigned to them. Now, we should not ignore the, let's say, team layer, the team responsibility, the team priorities when designing the architecture. By the way, for architecture, how teams are organized is as important as all the technical aspects, because it's the team who is going to deliver, it's the team who is going to focus on the priorities, it's the team who is going to make decisions, right? So from a high level, from architecture perspective, the team is going to be assigned a priority, a goal. And now, whatever it takes to meet the goal, to meet the criteria, that's going to be a good solution. By the way, so why am I questioning centralized stores as viable solutions? Imagine that you're starting with a system that is rather small, but it's growing more and more. People are working on it, especially if this is a, let's say, big corporate system that multiple teams are already working on it, and somebody decides to come up with centralized stores such as, yeah, you name it, Redux, NGRX, the traditional one, whatever the centralized thing is. The problem is that we would like teams to be independent on each other, right? Because teams have different goals, teams have different priorities. And now, if I create a room, like a store, like the store for the state, for a front-end application, the thing is, the more teams share, the less independent they are. Right? And this is something that has pretty much not very many technical aspects related to it, but it's very, very, very important in the long run. So I would like to draw a little bit for you. So first of all, the first thing that I would like to focus on is that we might have, dear everybody, different teams. So let's say there would be a team A, team B, and team C. Now, if we provide a centralized state management solution that would have to fit all of them, the problem is, dear everybody, how would we make them independent? So let's say there is some piece of the state, there is some other piece of the state. I'm just going to use different colors for different teams. Now, you could say basically, what would go wrong here? Everything is fine, everything is nice. But things turn out not to be very simple, rather sooner than later. What would happen, dear everybody, if I have a piece of state that is going to be shared across the two teams? where should I put it? Sooner or later, this is going to happen. And actually, this happens way more often than not, that we have some shared data. Now, the problem with centralized stores is that they tend to be normalized, such as you have normalized databases. So basically, a data store, database, whatever we call it, is normalized when there is a single source of truth for every piece of information. So basically, if there is a product, if there is a user, if there is anything, there is basically one record, one document, one object. So we fetch the data from one place. If we want to update it, we update it at one place. So you could say, hey, that's kind of a nice feature, like single source of truth. What could go wrong with this? Dear everybody. Everyone changes everything. So first of all, I might want to have a, let's say, list of objects as an array, and I would like to have a list of objects as a dictionary, whatever, for whatever reasons there are. I might want to have something paginated. I would like to have something cached. I don't want to have something cached. Now, whatever I share, we need to find a compromise. We need to find a trade-off, right? So we need to find a common decision, common ground. Now, since, let's say, I'm going to relate to an example from e-commerce, so because that's basically something that more or less we all know, so we know how do customers come to find a product in a catalog, to add a product to a cart, then to submit an order, etc., etc. We all know this process more or less well. So the entity that we might want to focus on is, for instance, a product. So a product in an e-commerce system is something that would basically pop up, maybe not everywhere, but in many, many different modules, different views, different places. But the thing is, the product means a totally different thing depending on which place of the system, which view of the application, of the interface you're looking at. And now, most probably, like, of course, it depends on your company or your product, but most probably what product means is going to be totally different across the teams. Now, should you have a single model that would define what a product is and be shared across different teams? Most probably not. Now, if you think about, like, if you would ask me, why am I speaking about all this? And that's true, yes, because everybody wants to find a normalized model, normalized data structure. What is called, to everybody, in architecture, it's called canonical data model. So basically that means there is a single unified model that everybody is going to use. To everybody, what should a product include? What should be the data for a product, generally speaking? ID, sure, like obviously, like name, right? What else? Price. Sorry? EAM. Okay. No, oh, okay, whatever. What else? Description, yeah. Probably some categories, pictures. What else? Well, many different ways of discounting, right? Because there could be rebates, discounts based on time period, based on customer, based on blah, 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 blah. Many different strategies. Lowest price. Like you mean the regulations from the law's perspective? Yeah, lowest price in last 30 days, etc. What else? Sorry? Replacements. Replacements, like complementary products, and all these things. Okay, so I think that's enough for now. And now, dear everybody, what's the problem? Now, generally speaking, my thesis is most probably you would like all the teams to have a separate model. And yeah, as you can imagine, that's not what I see in my consultancy work. Now, dear everybody, what would be a canonical data model? It's basically this one TypeScript interface or whatever language you're using that is going to include maybe not all of them exactly, but too many of them, too many of these pieces. Now, dear everybody, cool. So these are the data that we would need to have in a product, but this is not all of the data because you could easily find out all the pieces that we are still missing. But Let's now figure out what are the modules within a e-commerce system that that a typical user would need to go through in order to do their stuff in a shop. So first of all, the first thing, catalog. So I'm just, as a customer, I'm just browsing through what is available, right? What next? Filters. Yeah, so basically filter would be a feature within a catalog, more or less. Checkout, so cart first, right? So after a cart, there would be a checkout to submit orders, right? Yeah, what next? Payment, sure. What next? Yeah, so there would be a notification here and there, but notifications could be in multiple different places, right? So there is not going to be a single kind of, notification page. User profile, okay, so that's, user profile is not a part of the business process, right? So it's a part of a system, or it's a module in the system, but it's not a part of the business process. Yeah, what, just after the payment? Delivery. Of course, delivery, right? What else? Now, if I buy something and I pay for it and I finally receive it, what is the kind of, maybe not the last, but recommendations, like maybe you would like to buy something more from us, right? So recommendations could be, what else? Review, feedback. Feedback/review. So how did you like it, right? Exactly. And now let's confront this model with all these modules that we have drawn over here. Of course, you could figure out that this doesn't have to be exactly a linear process, and most probably it's not linear, and there might be many different forks going, left, right, up, down, etc. There might be many, what we call in architecture, swim lanes. How do we go through the process? So there might be lots of different variations. But somebody has mentioned that there is a price. Okay. Now, what I would like to ask you is, like, somebody mentioned price. I know that was not a detailed question, but imagine you walk into a project and you see that there is a product interface or a class, and it has a price number or price float, price decimal property. Now, what is a catalog price? How would you describe it in just a few words? What does a price mean in terms of the catalog? Yeah, so the clients can see a product and determine whether they can afford it or not. But generally, this is our offer. How expensive is the product? What do we offer for you to buy, right? So that's one thing. But when we are here, is the price the same thing when we check out? Not necessarily, right?
It might be the sum of all of the products.
Yeah, but okay, so the sum of all of these, I believe that's going to be a total price over here, so that would be yet another thing. But a price for a product in the catalog and the price for the product in checkout is not semantically the same thing. Is that anyhow outlined from the price word? No. And that's the thing. Now, I don't mean that you should have a very long property name that describes absolutely the whole world, because that might not be the most, effective and the most comfortable way for doing things. So maybe we would just like to have a price. But the thing is, if this team is responsible for the catalog, the price always means the very same thing, which means this is an offer for anonymous customer always, period. Now, if you have a rebate or a discount or whatever we call it, that would be a totally different team. Now, that team, when they provide a price for a catalog, that always means after, let's say, that could be for an anonymous customer, of course, but there could also be a customer that is, I don't know, put into a group, or a customer that has already made some orders, and for this reason, we give them some rebate, depending on, and here comes multiple different strategies. But the thing is, we have a price here, we have a price here, but there is a different semantics. So essentially, this is what strategic DDD is about. Basically, the same word product. The same word, price, but different meaning. Semantics is different. So this is very kind of brief, very, very short, but if you understand this simple kind of trick, and doctors are going to hate me for it, then you kind of understand the entry level to what DDD essentially is about. Okay, so we've got a payment. Now, if I have a payment, what should be the document that confirms that I have bought something? Invoice or a receipt, yeah, so let's focus on invoice. Now, what is the price on an invoice? Is that the same thing that I see in previous modules? Totally different, right? Like, I can assume nothing, I can make no assumptions that it's going to be the same thing, right? So, first of all, different pieces of knowledge could have totally different semantics, so that's one thing. Now, could you please tell me description, or, yeah, in which modules would description fit? Catalog. Yeah, all right. So, in which modules does, let's say, discounting make sense? Where should we put it? Checkout. For instance, of course, we could have a separate rebate modules, etc. So we're not going to, divide it by very small pieces. So that's not our goal here. All right. So what should we put into an invoice? Like, we have not, put all the important data. So yeah, we're going to add something here. What should we include about a product in invoices? Tax information, right? But where should tax information be also included? Apart from invoices. Checkout. Okay, so this depends on the business. So essentially, in one shop, you would show what is the information about the tax on the checkout stage. On other businesses, it might not make sense, right? So it highly depends. But what is important? Let's say our law regulations today, let's say 15th or 14th May, whatever today date is, let's say we don't have to display it. But there is a law regulation coming up in, I don't know, month or whatever, and from that moment, we have to put it. Dear everybody, how many teams should be affected by the change?
Wow.
Well, that would be expected that there would be one. Now, think about it again. If you think about something that is unified, a model that is going to be used across modules, a model that is going to be across teams, this, whatever you share, is going to be, dear everybody, affecting everybody that is using it. And now, I think we've got the idea. How could we use a centralized store solution if we do carry on with multiple teams, so that we kind of get the best of both worlds, so that we do have different models for different teams, for different modules, but technically, for whatever reason, let's say legacy reasons, we do want to use this Redux, NGRX, whatever that is. How could we kind of, in Polish we say, have an apple and eat the apple? How could we connect the two things? Essentially, most probably, and well, what I see most often is that on your API, there would be a get/products on your endpoint, or get/something/products, and here you would have a definition for products, right? But if you want to get the data from catalog, you get it from here. If you want to get the data for invoice, well, maybe you get it from here, right? Because this already exists here, but this is, again, a unified definition. Now, what many developers do very often is that since there is a endpoint that provides a model, this is going to be reflected in our client store, right? So whether it's Redux, NGRX, whatever you're using, there would be basically a slice that defines products and is getting shared, right? So what could we do instead of that? We could do namespacing, but the thing is, we would have products, let's say catalog products, that could be basically namespacing, but we have a product here, and let's say we have a cart products or whatever, or basically a cart, but cart also includes the information about the product, right? If we have, let's say, an admin panel that is going to modify the data about the products, then we would have, again, edited or editable products, etc. What is going to happen across the data that is being used in these different slices of the state? There is going to be some redundancy across them, right? For instance, definitely ID is going to be included here and here and here and most probably in many other places as well. But the name could also be included, right? So do I need to know the name of the product in the catalog? Yes. Do I need to know the name in the checkout? Yes. Do I need to know the name in the invoice, etc., etc., etc.? Yes. So there might be way more redundancy. And then a front-end developer comes and say, hey, if I need to change the name, then I need to change multiple places, and that sucks. So let's provide a single definition. What should be the solution here to everybody? Just 2 minutes. So first of all, to everybody, what we do here, if we provide a centralized definition, so this canonical data model, then the teams, the modules, get integrated with each other, right? But they get integrated by data. So this is one of the most coupled ways of integration. We can integrate by events, we can integrate by commands, so basically what has happened, what I want you to do, so what I want to happen in the future, and by data, so what we have right here, right now. Integration by data, integration by state is like integration by database. This is one of the most coupling solution. Now, what is the number one solution to provide decoupling generally in software? What abstractions? Not by data, not by commands, because we're not really interested in changing anything, or not, at least not yet, because it's quite difficult to figure out what is a command, what is an event on frontend, right? And that's, by the way, why Redux introduced actions, which is not an event, not a command, nobody knows what it is, right? But, to everybody, events. So, if I'm in a module where I edit a product and I change the name, what is the problem for me to basically dispatch an event that would be called name changed, right? And now, whoever is interested, just listen to this plain old stupid event, which is just a plain old object. And that's it. That's the most fundamental thing to everybody decouple modules, decouple pieces of your architecture. So basically use events. Now, have you ever find a code base where you have a centralized store solution where different slices communicate outside of the store via events, just to update? Probably no, I have not seen it either. So even though this is most probably a good idea to decouple different teams because they have different priorities and different constraints, etc. This is a good idea, but that's not something you will ever see in any front-end tutorial. Why? Because front-end developers are not really interested in architecture and basically the fundamentals of software design, etc. So what I would suggest you to do is basically don't go into centralized store solutions, because if you have distributed stores, like, I know, MobX, like NGRX signal stores, you name it, whatever that is, then you need to integrate them technically anyway. And also, if one team wants to have one solution, another team wants to have a different solution, they're free to go. So I would like to leave you with this single idea that please think about the semantics of what a certain piece of information means, that most probably you don't want to have a single definition of a thing. Think about what does that mean from a business perspective, what is a semantic of an entity, and you might want to have multiple different definitions of what a product is for totally different teams, right? They don't need to be the same. How do they integrate with each other? Via events. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So now that was fantastic. Especially, was it Excalibur or?
Yeah.
Okay. I love it. Love it. There's two big camps: Excalibur or TL Draw, and there's like a perpetual war. Anyway, do we have questions? Remember, okay. There we go. please, you're gonna receive a microphone in your face now. Yes, there you go. That sounded wrong.
Does it? Oh, okay, it works. Okay, I thought it's just a toy. Yeah, great talk. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Just to consider like bigger projects that run for, let's say, years by different teams. Have you considered like a mixed approach where you have event-driven front-end architecture, let's say, approach with some shared stores for, let's say, snapshots and many other things? Because you could have some shared logic in calculating some, I don't know, analytics or other data or just validations, and you would like to share it across all the consumers. Like, what's your attitude towards those mixed approaches?
Okay. So first of all, it's not a problem that is new. Kind of with all due respect, of course, but that's you're not the first person that asks this kind of question. So what I would advise kind of you all to do is basically to reach out to literature. So what I mean by that would be basically implementing domain-driven design, etc. Or you can basically query or prompt your LLM to basically kind of summarize the most important things, etc. But answering your question, it's kind of a standard way to separate logic into two different types. One is the technical aspects, so basically how to deal with your technical library, what are the patterns to deal with that, etc. And a totally different thing is domain related. So about your business. So for instance, if you have a library, I don't know, React query, Angular query, whatever, and you need to have a reusable utility that doesn't care whether it's a product or an order or an invoice, basically it doesn't matter at all. So basically no problem to share it, because what would be a reason for anybody to change it? Basically a change of the library itself, right? So if you want to opt out, like your team wants to opt out from a certain library, certain tool, whatever, then maybe they can, maybe they cannot. But if they change the library, they don't need your utility anymore. Right? So depending on your kind of conventions, you can do it. But if you have a piece of logic, domain logic that you would like to share, then problems start to pop up. For instance, how do you calculate price? A totally different algorithm or a strategy for calculating price could be for a cart or a cart checkout, because slightly different calculations appear there depending on who you are, blah, 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 blah. And totally different calculations happen when you calculate an invoice, or kind of, you know, you could come up with different other examples.
You're referring to reusing. Like if on the invoice you need the previous calculation from the price, from the order.
Not necessarily, because what you have on what you have on an invoice is going to be most probably, like, again, it depends on the business, but it's going to be a snapshot of what happened at a certain point in time. But if you would recalculate it today, you might get a different price, right? So it really depends. As a rule of thumb, if you have anything that is domain related, and even today, let's say today the discount team and the invoice team need to have exactly the same code. They should not reuse it. They should copy it. Why? Because it could change in the future, so you don't want them to share the same thing.
Thank you.
I'm so
You're
sorry.
welcome.
Warsaw.